When we think about power in the tech world, our minds usually jump to intentional stuff, right? Like an algorithm that's built to keep you scrolling, or a feature designed to make a company more money. But what about the power that designers wield by accident? That's what we're diving into today. How design choices, even when they come from a good place, can have these huge, unforeseen, and sometimes truly tragic consequences. And we're going to start with a story that makes this point in the most chilling way imaginable. So, can a software bug kill? It's a heavy question, right? But believe it or not, this isn't a hypothetical. The answer takes us back to a hospital in the 1980s and to a story that, honestly, every single person who designs software should know. Yeah, our first story is about a machine called the Therac 25. And it's just a brutal reminder of what's at stake when a design meets the real world. So on paper, this thing was a miracle of modern medicine. The Therac 25 was this advanced radiation therapy machine. It was a tool for healing, designed to go after cancerous tumors with these super precise beams of radiation. A lifesaver. Okay, so imagine you're a technician. Something goes wrong. This is what you see on the screen. Malfunction 54. That's it. No other details, no blaring alarms, no clue about the absolute catastrophe that was happening just a few feet away from you. So here's the crazy part. A totally normal human habit is what triggered a fatal flaw. If a technician got really good and fast at entering the treatment data, a software bug, what programmers call a race condition, would pop up. See, the machine's super powerful electron beam would fire, but a critical safety shield that was supposed to diffuse it, well, it wouldn't get into place fast enough. The result? The patient was hit with a concentrated blast of radiation up to 40 times the dose they were supposed to get. And because malfunction 54 also showed up for tiny harmless glitches, the busy technicians just learned to ignore it. They clear the error and carry on. 6. That's the number. At least 6 people suffered these massive overdoses. They experienced horrific radiation burns, and several of them died. All from a software bug that the designers never even considered could happen in a busy real-world clinic. Okay, so a tragedy like this, it just forces you to look past the lines of code. You have to ask a much bigger question about design itself and the invisible power that designers actually have. And that brings us to this really important idea at the heart of our explainer: unintentional power. It's this concept that a designer with zero bad intentions can end up hurting someone just through the unexpected side effects of their choices. They're exercising power, whether they realize it or not. The source we're looking at has this great analogy for it. Picture this: a big person carrying a super awkward, bulky package down a crowded sidewalk. They don't mean to bump into people, but because of the package, they just knock people aside. The software designer, well, they can do the exact same thing with their creation, just thrusting people aside without ever meaning to. And this is the key, right? The people who designed the Therac 25 weren't evil. They were just focused on the wrong thing. They had this kind of tunnel vision. They'd built a machine that worked perfectly in the sterile, controlled environments of a lab, but they totally failed to think about the chaotic, high-pressure world of a real clinic, where a technician might just type a little bit faster than they ever imagined. So to really wrap our heads around this kind of failure, we can use a pretty helpful framework. It breaks down all the different pressures and responsibilities that go into any design project and sorts them into 4 different levels. Okay, so here they are. Level 1 is all the nitty-gritty technical stuff, how it performs, the engineering choices. Level 2 is about the company, budgets, deadlines. Level 3 is about the effects you think the system will have. And then there's level 4, the big one. This is all about the wider impact on society, things like privacy, power, and fairness. And if you look at the Therac 25 designers through this lens, it becomes so clear. They were geniuses at level 1. They built a machine that was a technical marvel. But their fatal mistake was completely missing level 4. They never really thought about the social world their machine was going into and the life or death impact that world would have on their design. Now, look, this whole idea of unintentional power, it's not just about these huge life or death disasters. It actually shows up in much smaller, more subtle ways all the time, shaping how we think and reinforcing biases. A study of old educational software is a perfect example.
This is fascinating. A study looked at educational software and found some really interesting and kind of troubling patterns. Software that was supposedly for boys was pretty much always built like a competitive game. But software for girls, it was built more like a tool, focused on goals. And get this, when a program was just for children in general, it almost always followed the boys' model, which subtly taught kids that computing was a guy thing.
And this wasn't just some fringe theory either. The bias was so obvious that when they asked female designers about it, a whopping 80% said, yep, this software is totally biased towards boys. It's a perfect example of how cultural assumptions just get quietly baked into our technology, wielding that unintentional power over kids. Okay, so if this unintentional power is literally everywhere, what are we supposed to do about it? I mean, the point isn't to just stop making things. It's about learning to create with a lot more awareness and, frankly, a lot more humility. Well, the author of the work we're digging into here lays out a pretty common sense three-step approach. First, just admit the problem is real instead of pretending it's not. Second, actually use methods to try and guess what the consequences might be. And third, and this is crucial, keep an eye out for those unintended effects after the product is out in the world, because there's no way you're going to catch them all beforehand. At the end of the day, here's the big takeaway. It's not about making software that's perfect. That's impossible. The world is way too messy. The real goal is a change in mindset. It's moving away from trying to build a technically perfect thing in a bubble and toward taking responsibility for how our creations actually act and affect real people in the messy, complicated real world. And that really leaves us with one last thing for you to think about. Look at the tech you use every single day, the apps on your phone, the software you use for work. Think about the choices somebody made when they designed it. What unseen, unintentional power might be at play quietly shaping your habits, your ideas, and your world in ways you've never even stopped to consider?